Good evening, everybody. If I may call the meeting to order, please. I am Councillor Ian Edwards, I'm Leader of the Council and Chairman of the Cabinet. A warm welcome to members of the public who are here to follow our proceedings this evening. You are most welcome. Before we get into the meeting, I'll just let you know about our health and safety. In the event of a fire alarm sounding, we will be evacuating and we will be going out, ideally through that door. If not, there are other fire exits. Don't worry, you won't be left alone. We will escort you. We'll make sure you're out safely. Can I ask, please, everybody to make sure their mobile phones are turned off and all their other devices? And that being done, we're ready to go into item 1, the apologies for absence.
Thank you, Chairman. We have no apologies.
Thank you, Mark. Item 2, declarations of interest matters before this meeting. Colleagues, are there any additional declarations? No? Item 3 is to approve the minutes of the last Cabinet meeting. Those are at pages 1 to 22. Are they agreed, colleagues?
Agreed.
Thank you. Item 4, this is to confirm to people who may be following us online and members of the public present that there are 2 sections to this meeting. Part 1 is the bit that we're holding now and we'll go on to. It's the bit in public. We will be discussing the papers and you are welcome to join and remain with us for as long as you wish throughout Part 1. There are matters of confidence, though, later on in the agenda item when we are talking about contractual matters. We then move into what is known as Part 2, when we break the video link and we invite members of the public to leave, as these discussions are confidential in nature. The actual topic item and the decision are published, but we just don't have members of the public present during the discussion of such issues. So we do have Part 1 and Part 2, and we're now going to move into the main part of the business, and this is Item 5 and beyond. And Item 5, if I could invite, please, Councillor Burrows to come forward, who's Chairman of the Select Committee for Public Safety and Transport. And I invite you, please, to present the report of your committee on electric vehicles, infrastructure and future policy development for the borough. Councillor Burrows.
Thank you, Leader, and thank you, Cabinet, for allowing me to present this report this evening. And on behalf of the Public Safety and Transport Select Committee, I'm delighted to present the outcomes and recommendations of this dynamic review over the last year, which sought to support the Council in developing its future policies and highlight how our borough will need to adapt to the growing transition from internal combustion engine vehicles to electric vehicles, or EVs for short. A very clear deadline has been set by central government in that from 2030, no new fully petrol or diesel powered cars or vans will be sold in the UK. And from 2035, this will be extended to hybrid vehicles, meaning all new vehicles and vans sold will need to emit zero emissions at the tailpipe. This is a truly major shift taking place. And whilst the Council is not responsible at this time for directly providing EV infrastructure, we will likely need to play a growing, enabling role to ensure that the borough is well prepared and that we can adapt to the growing growth in EV demand from our residents, visitors and commuters, as well as businesses, and also the resultant technological changes and behavioural patterns arising from all of this. For Cabinet's due consideration over the coming months and indeed years, the Select Committee has put together a set of recommendations grouped for their preferred short, medium and long-term attention. In respect to Recommendation 5, in which the Select Committee is recommending a proactive enforcement approach on developers failing to provide suitable EV charging in new developments when approved, it is recognised that this would, as a Cabinet member rightly states in the report, need to be within existing procedures for reporting of planning breaches. I would also like to draw Cabinet's attention to Recommendation 9 and the annex in our report, which sets out some long-term horizon findings from our review and some key variables we have identified in how current and emerging EV technology and infrastructure may develop and change over time. To end my presentation, it is hoped that this review will form an important springboard from which residents and local businesses can be assured that Council is taking a future-proof approach and playing its part in facilitating a robust and comprehensive electric vehicle infrastructure for the borough, both now and in the years to come. I'd like to thank the members of the Select Committee for their commitment to this review and of course all of the officers and witnesses who contributed to the review, and I commend the committee's report to Cabinet. Thank you, Leader.
Thank you very much. Councillor Burrows. Councillor Riley.
Thank you, Leader, and thank you, Councillor Burrows, for this extraordinarily important report. And thank you to your members of your committee and to witnesses and especially to officers who have compiled this report. The importance of the report can be seen in the recommendations on page 26 and 27, which I commend to Cabinet, and the 24, 25 rather, and the extent of the recommendations are divided into three sections: short-term, medium-term and long-term, because it shows the coverage of the consideration of this significant change in transport behaviour. Leader, one of the important things about the contract that we have chosen to develop with a commercial partner is the flexibility of that contract, but more especially making sure and being cautious to make sure that the contract has the best benefit for residents. We have been cautious in our approach in terms of detail. We are aware of other authorities that have perhaps gone off a little faster than we have, but there have been complications as a consequence of those actions in many cases. But this is a commercial enterprise that we are entering with a partner, and we have made sure that residents get the very best commercial deal out of it, and that our residents are going to be well served by this. Councillor Burrows is right that our position in regard to this is facilitating and bringing together various other agencies and partners. We're already aware of certain out-of-town stores and other commercial organisations that are or will be offering electric vehicle charging. It's a question of bringing all those together. But helpfully, this report, as I say, in the short, medium and long term, highlights a number of tensions. So, for example, those between electric vehicle charging spaces and parking management schemes, all those sorts of things are covered in this report for us to think about. So I commend this report to Cabinet. It's a very good report. I thank Councillor Burrows and commend the report to Cabinet. Thank you.
Colleagues, any other comments? Councillor Burrows, I'd like to say a particular thank you to you and the committee for this report. It is a very good report. It's timely. It is well presented, well written, well thought through. It provides us a very helpful framework. And what I would invite you to do as a committee is to keep an eye on progress. Okay, we wish you to ensure that along with our facilitation, there is energy and drive in our ambition and our progress. And the Select Committee can be helpful to us by ensuring that we maintain momentum in delivering this move to EVs. So thank you very much for your work to date, and we look forward to continued contribution in this field in the future. Thank you very much, Councillor Burrows. Colleagues, are these recommendations agreed? Agreed. Thank you. Move on, please, to agenda item 6, the expansion of Meadow High School. Councillor Bryant.
Thank you, Leader. I would like to propose agenda item 6, the expansion of Meadow High School. The recommendations are set out on page 59 at the bottom. There are two recommendations. One is to agree the progress with the expansion of Meadow High School through the creation of a satellite unit up at Harefield Academy, and second is to delegate all future decisions to the Leader of the Council, Councillor Bianco, the Cabinet Member for Property Infrastructure, and other relevant Cabinet members in consultation with the Corporate Director of Place. As the report states, Meadow High School is the only council-maintained secondary special school with 257 pupils on roll, as at the October census 2021 last year. Meadow is now the largest special school in the borough. There are currently 4 modular buildings coming to the end of their useful life. The Meadow site is currently being rebuilt with permanent classroom structures and a new dining hall. This work is being carried out under the Priority School Buildings programme. So rebuilding on the Meadow site does not in itself address the rising demand for special school places. Therefore, we are proposing to create a self-sufficient satellite unit at the unused residential boarding block at Harefield Academy, as well as using the shared dining facility for both schools in that situation. This will create an additional 90 places and over the two sites a net gain of 98 special school places for pupils. This proposal is supported by both the governing bodies and is currently being shared with parents and other stakeholders. The proposal will also go out to formal consultation, so later in this year this item will come back to Cabinet as a future agenda item for further approvals. The existing and new provision supports the delivery of the dedicated schools grant recovery plan and is part of the Council's strategy for special schools places that we have been working towards for the past couple of years. The intention is to have all the works completed for an ambitious September 2024 deadline. The full report is on pages 59 to 65 and I therefore move agenda item 6. And the two recommendations.
Thank you very much, Councillor O'Brien. What is not immediately obvious to residents and others who may be following the meeting is the linkage between this item and what is a small part of item 9, when we will mention the DSG safety valve agreement. It is only through the achievement of that safety valve agreement that we have been able to secure the funding from government to provide these additional necessary school places, which, as Councillor O'Brien pointed out, was identified some years back, and we have been striving to deliver over this period. This is exceptionally good news. It will allow us to educate and provide the education for our local residents with special needs within their own communities and without the need to travel far. This is undoubtedly of great benefit. I congratulate officers for bringing this forward. Colleagues, is this recommendation agreed? Agreed. Thank you very much. Agreed. Agenda item 7, the counter-fraud strategy. Councillor Goddard.
Thank you, Leader. The counter-fraud team is already established within Hillingdon as a key element, a key player in our assertion of strong financial controls. The significance of that is that if you look at the current financial year and you look at the performance of the counter-fraud team up to the 31st of December last, that team had achieved savings and loss prevention which amounted to £2.47 million. So very significant indeed. If you look at the strategy which has been laid out for 2022 to 2025, there are several key objectives in there, and I'll just run through those to illustrate the significance of the counter-fraud team. First of all, obviously, it is to maximise loss prevention within council services through effective counter-fraud activity. Secondly, to limit the opportunity for instances of fraud and corruption across the council. Thirdly, to create a strong deterrent effect towards fraud and corruption. Next, to improve the council's reputation across all stakeholders through the visibility of effective counter-fraud activities. To improve the council's overall corporate governance arrangements. To reinforce an organisational culture which has a zero-tolerance attitude towards fraud. And to embed and maintain an organisation-wide fraud risk awareness, and to do this by following an annual work plan for each financial year. What the team does is to use a risk-based approach and measures which are reported on by reference to a series of key performance indicators which are set out within the strategy. The plan has been approved by the CMT and the Audit Committee, and the recommendation is that Cabinet should approve the strategy which is set out on pages 67 to 81 of this report. So I therefore move this recommendation.
Thank you very much. Another good report. These officers do a great piece of work to protect not only the interests of the council, but the interests of our residents. Colleagues, are these recommendations agreed? Agreed. Thank you. Agenda item 8, the internal audit strategy. Councillor Goddard.
Thank you, Leader. The internal audit team provides a number of services to us as an authority. Of course, there's assurance, but they also provide advisory consulting. They cover our core financial systems, and again, they're a major contributor to our corporate governance, and indeed are an integral part of our annual governance statement. The plan, which has been laid in front of us, addresses the range of services to be offered to council services and the resourcing required to fully equip these annual plans. And it should be recognised in this context, actually, that going forward there's going to be much closer working between the counter-fraud and the audit teams. A notable indicator of success in the view of the audit team is that they have an aspiration to see a reduction in the number of recommendations which need to be made as a consequence of their work in the medium to longer term. Again, this strategy has been approved by the corporate management team and the audit committee. The plan is set out on pages 83 to 106 of the pack, and I move recommendation in support of this plan.
Thank you. Again, Councillor Goddard, another very important team, often an unsung one, often, unfortunately, seen too much to be the police officers of the organisation, and that is regretted because they're actually the help of the organisation. These are the improvement team that come in and shine a little bit of light and give a bit of assistance to help us get better. We value them, and I very much hope that through a process of cultural change, all officers will value the contribution they make. They should not be seen as a risk and a threat. They should be seen as a benefit, and I very much hope that we move more speedily towards that sort of culture within this council. Colleagues, is that recommendation agreed? Agreed. Thank you. Move now to agenda item 9, the monthly budget monitoring report for month 10.
Thank you, Leader. So this is a report on the results for the council for the period to the 31st of January 2022. And the overall financial position of the council continues to be one of financial strength and stability. So if we look at our general fund revenue account, we have an underspend against budget of £497,000, and that's a small improvement of £19,000 on the position that was reported at month 9 last month. General balances continue to be projected at £26.6 million, and of course we've had to deal with exceptional pressures arising from COVID-19, and those for 21-22 are now projected at 19.2 million, which is an increase of 219,000 on the position which was reported at month 5. However, it's important to recognise that the council has received committed funding from central government amounting to £21 million, which will cover these pressures, and of course we continue to retain earmarked reserves as previously reported as an additional contingency. With regard to our programme of savings for 21-22, we're making very good progress. Of the £10.4 million of savings budgeted for the year, £8.4 million are banked or are well progressed for delivery by the year end, and a further £1 million is in early stages of delivery. Turning, if I may now, to the dedicated schools grant, the financial position remains unchanged, with a deficit of £12.7 million projected for the year, giving a rise to a cumulative deficit of £38 million by the 31st of March 2022. I will report in greater detail later on about the successful conclusion of our negotiations with the Department for Education, which will finally resolve this issue. Turning to the housing revenue account, this continues to report a close adherence to budget, with a forecast surplus of £142,000, being a £9,000 improvement on the position reported at month 9. I therefore move recommendation 1 within part A of the report set out on page 108. Then turning to part B of the report on page 130, this sets out a number of recommendations which have a financial impact, and these are itemised 2A to 2L. Now, the vast majority of those are self-explanatory, so I won't take up colleagues' time by going through them. However, there are three particular matters that I do want to draw to colleagues' attention. The first is that in view of the upcoming Platinum Jubilee celebrations, an additional earmark reserve amounting to £160,000 has been created to cover the costs of this celebration. And I think it's noteworthy that that amount of money is reserved to cover a number of costs for the organisers of street parties. First of all, the cost of road closures. Secondly, the cost of public liability insurance, but also a contribution of £250 per party towards the costs of laying on the event. So I think that's actually a very good news story. Okay. At item 2K, we are requested to ratify the agreement with the Department of Education relating to the dedicated schools grant. Now, it is perhaps worth just reminding colleagues of the history of this matter. Very simply, there has been a tremendous increase in the number of instances of children needing support, needing help with special educational needs cases. And the growth in the number of cases and the growing cost of those cases has far outweighed the government, central funding government has made available. Okay. And so it has created a situation where the council, like many other authorities, has acquitted its responsibilities very fully and in exactly the right way, but has borne the cost of this support and this service. And I'm pleased to report that now we have achieved an agreement with the Department of Education whereby we will receive a repayment of £25 million, and £11 million of that will be received this month before the end of the financial year. Okay. Also tied into that agreement is the facility for us to receive capital funding to create some of the additional places, as my colleague Councillor O'Brien referred to earlier. So I think this is again a very positive outcome. There are a number of steps, a number of remedial steps they're described as within the safety valve agreement, which relates to this resolution. But I think it's worthwhile making the point to Cabinet that actually the vast majority of these remedial steps were in hand and were being dealt with way ahead of the safety valve agreement being concluded. This is a great step forward. It will achieve a situation where we will eliminate this deficit by 2025, I think my final comment on it is that not only have we seen a situation where the Department of Education has provided this repayment of funds to us, but we do know that they're also re-evaluating the levels of grant funding which are made available to authorities for this. My closing comment is that I really want to thank Tony Zaman and the officer team for the great work that has been done towards this. The final point that I wanted to raise is item 2L, which is on the addendum papers, and this relates to the single-person council tax relief, which is available to single occupiers of homes in respect of council tax. And of course, we now have the challenge that where many of our residents are looking to provide accommodation to refugees as a result of the war in Ukraine, and taken at face value without some change, there would be a situation where those residents would lose this single person discount. And so what we have here is a proposal to ensure that if a single person is taking in refugees, they will not lose that single person's discount. So I think that is a very important and good news story. Okay. So therefore, Leader, what I would like to do is to move recommendations 2A to 2L, which are set out on page 130 of the pack.
Thank you very much, Councillor Goddard. As always, very comprehensive. We are extraordinarily benefit from your experience and your partnership, it has to be said, with the officer team around the management of our finance. It undoubtedly ensures that we remain in a very strong and stable position. Within your report there was the matter here of this borough standing alongside its residents in support of the Ukrainian nationals, which is important, and also the settlement of the long-standing issue with the dedicated schools grant. I also wish to record my thanks to our Chief Executive, Tony Zeman, for his contribution and drive and leadership in delivering this agreement. Now the challenge is on to actually deliver the agreement, and we will be equally as successful in that. I am delighted that the bubble on this issue has now been burst, and that we will be able to move forward soundly and securely in the provision of SEN education for our young people. Really good news in these reports. Colleagues, are these recommendations agreed?
Agreed.
Thank you. Members of the public, we are now going to move into part 2. I hope that we have been able to excite you and inform you on the matters that you came. If there were issues that you believe that you might have heard more about or wish to hear more about, as you leave, the gentleman in the suit that's just there, mention it to him, because I would welcome the feedback and how we can improve our meetings to make it more accessible to you. So if you have any comments,